All right, so welcome to the Dr. Budgill podcast. I'm super excited to have Ian Smith here, who is the co-founder of the Atilis Gym. I think you have a partner in your business as well, right?
Yep, I'm one of the co-owners. My partner's name is Frank Trombetti, and we run the Atilis Gym of Belmar.
And Belmar, and that's in Belmar, New Jersey. And you've been all over the news. I think I'm in New York, so you've been in the local news around here. But I saw you on CNN. I think you were on Chris Cuomo's show a little while back. So just a little background story for folks who may not be familiar with what's been going on. You own a gym, and obviously all gyms have shut down or were ordered to shut down back in, I think, for March for you guys also, like at the end of March, like it was in New York.
March 16th was the first day of the shutdown.
So March 16th, obviously everyone was very compliant with whatever the rules were initially because no one knew what the hell was going on with COVID, and things were just moving so fast. Schools were shutting down, restaurants were shutting down, gyms were shutting down, doctors' offices were shutting down. Nearly
everything was. Yeah, I mean, the whole world was coming to a screeching halt.
And then at some point during all of this, I think all of humanity in the United States, at least in like New York, New Jersey, where we were really shut down, people just started like really kind of losing their shit a little bit and questioning okay, I get it. We did all this for so long. When is the end? What's the plan? Why are some things now able to be open and some things have to stay closed? And there really wasn't a lot of rhyme or reason. And, a lot of the rules seemed somewhat arbitrary, like you could do this, but you can't do that. Like for instance, I play golf, and when we were allowed to play golf again, you couldn't touch the golf balls at the range, which already they're clean when they're picked up and they're sitting outside the whole time anyways, and a truck picks them up, they go into a machine, get clean, and get put into a bucket. So you could, and whoever was handling those balls was using gloves, so you couldn't touch the balls on the range, but you could open up a cooler to grab a bottle of water. So, it just all the rules, it really made no sense. And I guess at some point during all of this, you and your business partner were like, this just makes no sense. Like, why can't we open our gym safely at this point? And, I've read through and I've heard all of the protocols you guys have in place. I mean, it is literally so intense and insane, the level of scrutiny that you're employing to run a safe facility. I mean, I can't imagine. I think COVID would run away from your gym just because it's insane. So, I mean, maybe if you could just speak to that. I know I just dropped a lot there, but maybe just kind of walk us through what those months were like for you being shut down and what really precipitated saying, hey, you know what? Like, this makes no sense. F this, we're opening.
So you kind of hit the nail on the head. Right in March, we saw this thing starting to develop in the news. I'm somebody who I always pay attention to the news cycle. I've always been interested in politics. I've never been a political person, but I've always paid attention to politics. So I was watching this kind of unfold as it was starting to pick up steam. And I kind of remember I was on a bachelor party out in Wyoming, like the last week of February. And I just kind of remember thinking like, what is this thing? You know what I mean? I think that's a collective thought that we all had, not only as Americans, but worldwide. We didn't know what was coming. We knew that something was coming, and we were just bracing for impact. So when they ordered the shutdown, we were not happy about it, because that's a really scary thing to ask of anybody, be it a business owner or anything. Like, hey, this crazy virus is coming, and we need you to cease all movement and lock in your home and quarantine and stuff. And it was a very uneasy feeling, I think, for a lot of people. So, but we complied, just like everybody else did. We in that circumstance, there wasn't enough information to say no. And although we weren't excited about it, sometimes you kind of have to make sacrifices for the greater good. So we said, all right, let's shut down. Let's give them their 14 days. And we did. But Frank and I, we're not the type to ever really stop working, and we own a nutrition store, supplement and nutrition store inside the gym. So we were coming still to the gym every single day, and we knew from day one that whenever we reopened, that business was going to be very different, at least for some time. that we were going to have to operate differently. So we started working right away on what would it look like in a COVID environment? You know, what would business look like for us? So we began to plan, and we did our homework, and we were reading the executive orders. We were reading all the statements put out by the CDC, the WHO, the president, the press, all that, trying to figure out what this thing was. And very quickly, we started to smell smoke, and it smelled political, almost right away. You know, you see the politicians immediately divide kind of right down the center, where policies on the left and policies on the right are almost opposite. And you saw it with the stimulus bill. You know, they wanted to pass the stimulus bill, and right away, you know, politicians being politicians, they both put forth equally crappy bills. You know, and that this was part of the deal of shutting down was, hey, don't worry, Americans, we got you. You know, we won't let anything bad happen to you. Small business owners, individuals, whatever it is, we got you. We're going to pass this great stimulus package. And of course, it fell laughably short, as it always does. You know, so, but the thing that really started to be a red flag for us was 11 days into the shutdown, they passed a $2.4 or $2.6 trillion stimulus bill. And in that stimulus bill, they were giving people money for 16 weeks. You know, and it's like, if we're talking about a virus with an incubation period of 2 weeks, why 11 days in are we already planning for 16 weeks of unemployment? You know what I mean? And that was our first kind of red flag. So at that point, we really started to look at what else is going on here. And very quickly, you know, 2 weeks turned into three turned into four, a month turned into a month and a half. And at the 7 week mark, Frank and I sat down and we said, all right, they asked for 14 days. We're at 7 weeks. What do we do? There was zero plans put forth to reopen. There wasn't even talk of reopening. It was, you know, the goalpost had already started to move. And that 14 days was very quickly gone. And the politicians weren't talking about that anymore. They were talking about, you know, they were on to the scare tactics of COVID, where, you know, they were just, all they want to talk about is the bad. They weren't putting forth any solutions. It's be afraid, stay home, you know, don't question anything we say, you know, clean everything around you, disinfect the entire world, sterilize everything, don't touch anything, don't go anywhere. And I'm by no means am I a doctor, but I have been working in the health industry for quite a long time. And the policies that they were talking about don't seem to be strong public health policies, because in any of this, they didn't mention the idea of individual health. And if you're talking about public health, you need to have a conversation about individual health too, because that's where public health begins. You can't just make these broad sweeping strokes and call it a public health policy. You can't have public health without individuals. And I noticed that it wasn't any talk about that. It wasn't any talk about how do we get healthy? How do we stay healthy? How do we bolster our immune systems? So it was political, and it was very, very clearly political. And for every day and week that went forward, it became more and more apparent. So at 7 weeks, Frank and I sat down and we collected all of the information that we had. We read the studies. We read the newest studies on coronavirus, how it was transmitted, and you know, whether asymptomatic people were actually infecting people, and everything that we could get our hands on. So using all that information, we put together a 15-point safety protocol. And we said, all right, this is our plan. Since the government asked for 14 days, we're at week 7. Nobody's talking about reopening gyms. We received no aid. Our bills are still due. We got to get back in business, because the world just doesn't work like that. There's not a pause button on the global economy, you know. And we were watching the fallout. Business is already failing 7 weeks in. And if we didn't do something, we were going to be one of those businesses. So we put together a plan, and I went on social media, and at the time I had a small following. I had about 20,000 followers of you know, the fitness Instagram and you know, followers at the gym and local. And I put out a video, and it was an announcement. It was the who, what, where, and why. I talked about the shutdown. I talked about what we planned on doing, how we were going to do it, and why we wanted to. And we put it forth publicly so that we weren't being openly defiant. We weren't just opening our doors and throwing a middle finger up to the government. This was about, hey, you guys have not put forth a plan. We have one. Let's talk about it. Let's discuss it. Let's get moving on this. Let's get the ball rolling and talking about solutions, and just stop talking about fear and death. And in addition, another thing that really set us off was these death counts were skewed almost immediately. There was all these reports coming out that there was no, at least for a long part in the initial part, there was no distinguishing between dying of COVID and dying from COVID. And everybody, I don't need to recap that.
No one had a heart attack. No one had, no one died.
Exactly. And it like I said, we started smelling smoke. And it's like, okay, if this thing's as scary, because remember, they said 2.2 million people would be dead by summer. That was Fauci's original warning to us. And it's like, all right, well, why are we cushioning the death numbers if this thing is as scary as you made it out to be? So we put forth the plan publicly because we had hopes that, in an American system of government, people are elect leaders, and leaders work for the people. And working for the people, you should work with the people. So we presented that plan. And to date, no politician has ever reached out, or no public health official has ever reached out to consult with us or to talk about this plan. So we put it out there, and we said we were gonna do it. It attracted the attention of a local media guy named Rich Zeoli. He runs a radio show out of Philadelphia, and we went on to talk about that. And that night, Tucker Carlson called and said, "I want you on the show." And that's kind of where the can of gas hit the fire. And that was the point of no return where, we said, "Hey, we're opening." And then the following Monday, we reopened. And that's kind of where the story really kicked off.
What date? When was that? That was in May?
That was May 18th. That was exactly 2 months into the shutdown.
Wow. It's interesting. So I've listened to a lot of your interviews, and I've read a lot of this stuff, and, obviously seen a lot of your social media stuff. And I think a lot of people on the far right are kind of leaning into the message, and I also think that I don't have no idea what your politics are. I don't know anything about it. And I think people will automatically assume that you're some diehard crazy Republican or something, or whatever it may be. But I like, Tucker Carlson and being on Fox and that sort of stuff, right? But
yeah, absolutely. Comes with the territory.
Right. So I'm a doctor. I stayed open, but a very limited amount. But for the same reason, it just didn't make sense. All the dermatologists in New York City, more or less, with the exception of a handful of us, they all closed down. There was all this pressure on social media that, we're doing the responsible thing. We're shutting down because of COVID. We don't want to spread COVID, whatever, But my whole thought was this: as a doctor, you don't run away from a pandemic. You run towards it. That's your job.
Yeah, exactly.
To be here doing this stuff. And just going back to my point, every point that you've made, it's I don't know how a rational individual could say that doesn't make sense. They're right spot on points. And I was watching the interview that when you guys were on Chris Cuomo, and he was, he's playing devil's advocate. As kind of, he wasn't doing it sincerely as a devil's advocate. He was just kind of saying, hey, these are the arguments on the other side. And both you and your partner, the answers that you gave, it just made total sense. Hey, listen, this is what we're doing. We're at 20% capacity. Have all these filters. We're cleaning all the machines. We're doing this. Everything that you said is so much more than I've ever even seen in a restaurant when you can go eat outside of a restaurant now. And I'll tell you that some of the other stupid stuff that I've seen is before everything shut down, they told restaurants in Long Island and Nassau County that you're only allowed to have 50% of capacity, in your restaurant. So one of the restaurants that we went to literally put all of the tables at 50% of the restaurant. So everyone was on top of each other. It was half the amount of people, but everyone was right on top of each other. I was it just makes no sense, and that's compliant with the law. But there's no common sense that's there. Your arguments and your, basically your stance is a common sense based stance. Hey, none of us know much about Corona, but a lot of the stuff that we know obviously is not true because The story has changed so many times. This is coming from me as a doctor. So many times the story has changed. Like are healthy people spreading the disease? There's a lot of stuff now saying that it's symptomatic people that are spreading the disease. There's so much conflicting data just because there's not a lot of data, and that's just the nature of it. But at some point, this is being in I have an office in New York City, and a couple of weeks ago I posted about this. I was walking around the West Village where my office is, and restaurants that I've known since I grew up in New York, that since my teenage years, that are just sort of like institutions of the village, none of them opened back up. And this is at the end of June, maybe beginning of July into June, something like that. Those restaurants are never coming back. There's no small business can sustain being shut down for 2 weeks. Let alone 3 months, and at some point, just for the health of, you guys are in the fitness industry, for the health of people obviously working on, and I'm a huge fitness nut, and I totally get that angle. We're going to get into that in a minute. But for that, for the health of society, people need to work. People who have businesses need to run their businesses. And you can't just say, okay, everything is shut down now for good. At some point, like you guys did it, 2 months. Okay, this is our plan. This is how we're going to do it safely, and we're presenting it to you. If there's a problem with this plan, then let us know. We can tweak it.
Let's talk about it.
Institute, what you may think is safer. Maybe there are some better ways to do it. Who the hell knows? But I haven't found a better way to do it than the way you guys are doing it. So I get it, man, and I get it. But I think the pushback from the government is like, hey, if we let one person do this, then we're going to lose total control and everyone's going to go haywire. I think what it should be is present us with a plan. If it seems reasonable, then on an individual basis, small businesses should have the ability to reopen.
Yeah, and it's we had a lot of issues with all of this, and part of it was the hypocrisy and the lack of common sense was just it's astounding. Walmart, Home Depot, all these big box retailers with these huge lobbying organizations, they were able to operate from day one without issue at all. And the amount of safety protocol that they put in place was laughable. It's like all of a sudden coronavirus can't get you in Walmart as long as you slap a mask that you bought from Etsy over your face. That isn't even a KN95 mask. It's just some cloth. And then you're good. You grab a Lysol wipe and you wipe the front of your cart down, and all of a sudden you're good to go. Meanwhile, there's no temperatures being taken. They're not, and they're not even enforcing this stuff. They had limited capacity, but then very shortly after that, that went by the wayside. They did that for maybe a week or so before they got bored and went back to operating as normal. And it's like, you're letting these mega corporations operate with impunity, and you're not regulating them. To even act like you are it's an insult. You're not going around and checking these things. But that's okay. But you're villainizing small businesses as if we're the actual cause of the spread of coronavirus. And it's like, no, let's walk this back a little bit. Let's look at some of the numbers. And then when you look at the numbers, it's like, now this really doesn't make sense, because you saw that even with the lockdowns, you saw in places like LA County when they were doing the antibody tests, I believe they did them up in New York and in Florida as well, that the virus continued to spread even with the lockdown measures in place. I think at one point, or even early on in LA County, I forget the exact statistic, I think it was 10% of the population was testing positive for the antibodies, which was like 5 million people or something like that. And that was in the middle of the lockdown, but when you start looking at who's been dying, over 50% of the deaths throughout the entire country, especially in states like California, New York, New Jersey, Michigan, and there's another one, Pennsylvania, the decision was made to put COVID positive patients into long-term care facilities. And the people that are in charge of our public health, our governors, our health department, they made that decision. And they justify that decision by saying, oh, well, we didn't want to overflow the hospitals. Well, I call BS on that, because even with the overfull hospitals that were built, up in New York, you had the Navy ship. Down here in Philadelphia, you had the Wells Fargo Center. They built out $1 billion or multi-million-dollar build out that was never even used. Those deaths in those places are a direct result of very bad policy, and they account for over 50% of the deaths. So if you take that 50% away, take that policy away, our death rate, maybe it's not 50%, maybe it's whatever, but it's going to be significantly lower. Now, can you still criticize small businesses for the spread of coronavirus and the fallout of coronavirus? No, where's the responsibility of these people who made these policies? But they don't want to talk about it. They dodge the questions, and they keep just saying that small businesses are the problem, that hair salons and nail salons. And it's like, no, you guys messed up big time here. So that was a major issue for us, especially with the big box retailers having almost no protocol in place. It just, the amount of doublethink that you need to be able to pull off to still buy into coronavirus as it's sold is absolutely incredible. You have to hold so many opposing positions on things that it's astounding. And it just got to the point where we said, you know what, enough is enough. Enough is enough. We're opening. We're going to stay open. It is our constitutional rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness that are being trampled on. It's our First Amendment rights. We are being abused by these policies, and especially when you have these governors who are putting forth these measures and saying, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, you're not allowed to do that, and they're all getting caught doing exactly what they tell you not to do. Governor Murphy, no indoor dining. If you Google Governor Murphy indoor dining, you can find 20 pictures of him eating in restaurants. Governor Gretchen up in Michigan, she was telling people in Michigan that they weren't allowed to quarantine in their summer lake homes. And that same weekend when she put it out, she was there. And it's like, you can't expect people to comply with what you're saying when you won't even listen to your own rules. Yeah. So it got to the point where it was like, okay, enough is enough. This is not about public health, because you guys have still yet to talk about individual health. And liquor stores are open, tobacco sales are open. They even, beyond liquor stores, they had delivery alcohol and pickup alcohol from restaurants. And it's like, you can't convince me that that's sound public health policy, because fast food stores are open. And if you start looking at the science, fast food has been shown to accelerate the mutation of viruses in the body. Alcohol shown to lower your immune system. Isolation or social isolation is shown to have negative effects on mental health, which just feeds right back into your immune system. So none of it was making any sense. And that's what we set out to do. We set out to make sense of it, and we set out to be very loud in doing so, because it wasn't just about our gym opening. We wanted the country to stop just being afraid. And not that you can't respect COVID, because COVID is a real thing. None of us ever debate that. My partner, Frank, lost his mother to it in the middle of this. So it wasn't about that, but it was about sensible policy. Yep. You can operate your business and you can resume your life without just throwing everything by the wayside, and you can respect public health at the same time, and you can care for yourself and for others at the same time. It's about being responsible. We're all adults and we're free citizens in a free country, and our government should have more faith in us to be responsible citizens. It's this nanny state that is really kind of alarming. Like, that's not government's job is not to protect your health. I know that some people think that way, and that might be an auxiliary job, but their primary job is to protect your rights. And they failed at protecting our health, first of all, especially with the senior centers. But then on top of that, they failed to uphold our rights. Governor Murphy himself went on Tucker Carlson and said the Bill of Rights was above his pay grade, and that in his policymaking, he wasn't thinking about the Bill of Rights. Like, you put your hand on the Bible and you swear an oath to protect the Constitution when you take these jobs. So either you BS'd your way through an oath and didn't read the Constitution, or you just don't care. And either of them is not a good scenario for an elected leader.
Right. I'm with you. I hear all that. So talk to me a little bit about what exactly specifically has been going on. I mean, you've been arrested multiple times. Your gym has been like barricaded. You had to like break into your gym. Just when did all that stuff go down? Because like, you know, you opened, and how soon after you opening did like you guys, you know, start getting in trouble? And I know you got like whatever gajillion dollars. I mean, literally like you're getting fined like $10,000 a day or something like that, right?
$15,546 and like 76 cents a day or something like that. So part of the reason that we garnered the media attention is that we knew that we hoped that government would want to work with us, but we kind of knew that they weren't going to. And we knew that if we didn't have all eyes on us, that we would get squashed like a bug. So when we reopened on Monday, May 18th, to an interview with Pete Hegseth standing on our front step, national media coverage once again. And Monday kicked off. We actually barricaded ourselves inside the building Sunday night because the state police were told not to grant us access. So we had some volunteers. We chained ourselves in. We slept the night through. And then we opened the doors Monday morning. A couple hundred people out in the parking lot, a line wrapped around the building with all of our members, every news media company, agency in the media area and national as well, all there. So Monday kind of was fine. There was police in the parking lot. There was a lot of supporters. We had everybody from just local kind of people who are very middle of the road in their political ideologies, and we definitely attracted the right wing at first. A lot of Trump supporters out there, a lot of people who are more conservative, but we did have a lot of people who were very much in the center, and a lot of people who were on the left too. But you saw a lot of the Trump flags and stuff like that. So we reopened. The day was proceeding as normal. There was heavy police presence in the parking lot.
Sorry to cut you off, man. So what were you guys, so you had a line going around the block. Were you just letting like 6 people in at a time for an hour or something? Like, how did you guys logistically handle?
So we originally set out with a 20% capacity based on our square footage. So according to the International Fire Code, for gyms and health clubs, I believe that's 50 square feet per person or something like that it works out to. And we have a 15,000 square foot facility. So it allowed us, and we were actually under 20%, but we capped it off at 44 members for that first week, just so that we could.
For like an hour? Like, did they have a limited amount of time to stay?
Yeah, so what we were doing was, because we expected a high demand, we were doing 44 people in at a time. Once that last person went through our safety protocol, the timer started and they had an hour and 15 minutes to get done their workout. And then after that hour and 15 minutes, we would come through, everybody would leave. All of our volunteers, we had about 10 volunteers, and then Frank and I, we would come through and we had misters, we had foggers. We came through, did a clean sweep of the facility, and then started all over again. So on Monday, right around 12 o'clock, the police approached us and said that they wanted to speak with us. The crowd kind of got a little unsettled, and I quieted the crowd down, asked everybody to let them speak. And the captain of the local police force, and they knew that we were going to do this ahead of time. We contacted them. A lot of them are our members. So captain came up and he said, you know, and it's a video that went kind of viral. He said, you know, formally you're all in violation of an executive order. And then he paused and took a deep breath and said, on that note, have a nice day, and turned and walked away. And that was like this moment where we were like, oh my God, like we did it. And very short-lived. A half hour later, Governor Murphy put pressure on the local police force and told them that they were going to be furloughed for 60 days if they didn't come in and give a citation. So we got our first round of citations that day. And then we just kept on working. Tuesday, we got more citations. Our members started to get citations. One of our members got arrested. And then it started from there, it just started to ratchet up more and more and more. On Wednesday, they set up cameras in the parking lot. They stopped giving us tickets because we were accepting the citations in front of the media, and that was just bad optics for them. So they were mailing our tickets to our lawyers, and then our members, they were setting up the cameras in the parking lot, and they were pulling them over down the street and giving them tickets there for violation of governor's orders. Late Wednesday night, or on Wednesday, Governor Murphy had a press conference, and he said that he was going to bring the health department into it. And on Wednesday night, at about 11 o'clock at night, somebody walked up to our door and slapped a notice of embargo, which is a health department shutdown, without ever stepping foot inside of our building, without ever contacting us, nothing. They just walked up, no due process. They slapped it on the building, said, "You're shut down," end of story. And the reason was because coronavirus, essentially. So on Thursday, we didn't open because Frank and I set out not to break the law. Through all of this, we maintain innocence. We have not broken any laws. We've disobeyed executive orders. They are not laws. And we didn't start this to become criminals. We did this because we truly believe we were doing what was right. So Thursday, we allowed our lawyers to look over what that health department shutdown was, and they told us that it was BS. So Friday, we reopened. We had a good day on Friday. More citations came. At that point, we were having about 400 people come to the gym all day. And then late Friday night, we received a notice that Governor Murphy had gone in front of his favorite judge here in New Jersey, Robert Lugie, who used to be an attorney general and is kind of just signs off on anything Murphy wants. And he issued a court order to obey the shutdown and issued the state the ability to come and physically change our locks. So they came in the middle of the night, they broke our locks, they changed them on us and locked us out. About 3 weeks went by, and we got the locks changed because we have a nutrition store inside, and they locked us out of essential business. And the promise was, we'll let you guys back in as long as you don't utilize the inside. And we said, okay, as long as we get our day in court, because we had a federal lawsuit against Murphy at that time. We said, we'll play nice. We were dragging 45,000 pounds worth of equipment and machines out every day into the parking lot, setting up a makeshift gym. Our day in court never came. And to date, any motion that we have filed against Governor Murphy in federal or in state court has not even been heard. The judges are just abstaining, and they're just stalling the process. Meanwhile, anything Governor Murphy wants, when he files a motion, he gets us in court that day. He'll file a motion at 8 o'clock, we'll be in court at 12. So, and the reason that we backed off was we wanted to allow the judicial system to work. In our opinion, the executive branch of government had failed us. The governor was failing the people. He was mistreating us, but in the American system of politics, you have checks and balances. That's why we have our 3 branches of government. We said, okay, we'll back off, we'll play nice, we'll abide by the rules, we'll take stuff outside, just so long as the judicial system does what it's supposed to do. And that doesn't mean necessarily rule in our favor. That means we get a fair day in court. And to date, we have not. So on July 4th, we said, you know what, enough is enough. We're keeping the equipment inside. We're opening up. Come arrest us on Independence Day. We'd love you to. And that day didn't come. We stayed open inside. And once people found out we were open inside, our capacity almost doubled overnight because people aren't a fan of working out in the 90-degree heat on blacktop. We had our diehard people there, but we also have a large population of older people who work out here. And when you're in your 60s and 70s, we have some Vietnam War vets and stuff like that, some salty old dogs who come, and they can't be outside doing that. So we operated inside for 3 weeks. We were served with a contempt of court notice, and Murphy once again got his way. And at that point, the judge ordered once again that our locks be changed. So Frank and I took a desperate measure, and we took the doors right off of the hinges. And at that point, it was come lock our doors. We don't have any. And we had the doors actually removed from the property, stashed at a house several miles away. We opened the gym 24 hours a day, and Frank and I began sleeping at the facility. So we brought air mattresses. This is actually our office/bedroom. We sleep in shifts, and we said, we're not leaving. We're not leaving. You're not going to lock us out of our business. One of the worst feelings I've ever had in the world was having a government official come to my business, a place that I've built, that I feed my family with, and lock the doors on me and say, you're not allowed to be here. And I can speak for Frank when I say this, we decided that was never going to happen again, especially in the absence of due process. To date, they have not presented any science that proves that this facility or any gym or indoor dining or movie theater or all these places that they say are high risk, they haven't actually presented any science that says this place is more dangerous than, say, a public transportation bus that you can operate at 100% capacity with 60 people and a bus driver in 340 square feet, no temperatures, da 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 da. They have not put the science forth. So, and to date, we stay the claim that if you can present that information to us, we will shut down. We have no bad intentions here. And if you can show to us that our facility is a place that puts people in danger, we will absolutely shut down. But that's not the case. And in fact, as of this morning, we have 25,546 visits to the facility since our reopening. Not a single case has been reported. We have an extensive tracking system that we implemented ourselves. We took the doors off the hinges. We began sleeping here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That lasted about 7 days. They came in early Monday morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, and they arrested us. They took us out in handcuffs and booked us. And when we returned later that day, there was plywood barricade over our doors. They had entered the building without permission and boarded it up. So we took a couple days to kind of recharge. And that following Saturday, we announced it. Again, the one thing we've never done is hide in any of this. You know, we were very open about what we've been doing every step of the way. And that Saturday, we had a crowd out in the parking lot supporting us, TV cameras, all that stuff. And Frank and I kicked the barricade down, walked right in, turned the lights on, turned the music on, and reopened the gym. And we've been doing so ever since. Now Governor Murphy has gone back to court in another contempt of court order, and requested that we be fined $15,546 a day, that we pay violation of litigants' rights fees in the amount of $46,000 a lump sum, and that we pay the Attorney General's fees of about $11,000 as well. So that at this point, we're well over $300,000 in fines. They've stripped us of our business license, again, without due process. They didn't show any evidence. They just said, you're a danger to the public. We said, please show us the evidence. They said, no, let's take a vote, 5-1. And we were actually told what the vote was going to be beforehand. We were told by an anonymous email, somebody on that council or somebody in the town who works in government, and said, this is coming directly from Governor Murphy. This is pressure being put on the mayor. The vote is going to be 5-1. Here's the person that's going to vote against you. Here's the person that's going to vote for you. Here's why he's going to vote for you, because he's a small business owner himself, because he understands all the rest of these guys are going to vote yes to strip your business license. So that's where we're at now. 24 hours a day, or we're still here 24 hours a day. Out of the past 30 some days, Frank and I have left one time each. We sleep here, we live here, we work here. My dog stays here with me. We are not shutting down until you give us science that shows what, because all they've been doing this whole time is conclusionary statements. All they've said is, you're a threat because I said so. And I don't care if you're an elected official. Just because you say something doesn't make it true. You still have the burden of proof. And again, if you can show us that, we'll shut down. So that's kind of the latest update. And as of recently, we had a candidate for Senate reach out. His name is Rick Mehta. He's running for Senate against Cory Booker. He reached out last week and wanted to help. And since Governor Murphy has made this political, the Atylis Gym is now a political rally and volunteer location for the Rick Mehta for Senate campaign. So we will not be shutting down.
Wow, man. That was a mouthful. I got a lot of questions.
Yeah, that's the short version too.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a badass story in so many ways, man. Are you married, kids, any of that stuff?
No, I have a girlfriend, and we have her 15-year-old son lives with us.
Okay, and what's her
I have a
take on?
family.
Yeah,
Um,
so what's like take on all this stuff?
well, it's tough.
They support you, but it's it's got to be like a lot of
Yeah,
stress for
it's
them.
it's very tough. It's tough for Frank's wife. It's tough for my girlfriend.
Right,
This is our entire life.
right.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This is all Frank and I have done for the past 6 months. Even before we reopened, we were here. We have read every word of every executive order. We've listened to every minute of every press conference. We've read the studies, and we continue to read the studies. We're constantly revising our plan. I mean, we have 6,500 COVID tests on site. We're constantly evolving, trying to figure out what next, what can we do to stay in business, how do we do it. So, and that's it's been our lives. So our family life has suffered greatly, and our loved ones suffer greatly for it, because we can't be husbands, we can't be sons, we can't be brothers to our family, because we are fighting for our lives at this point. And if we let off the gas at all, we lose. So
Yeah,
it's really tough on them.
I feel for you and I feel for them, man. It is a very tough situation, man. Is your gym kind of like the big gym around here is Bev's gym? I'm sure like
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
is your gym kind of like similar vibe, like
Yeah, it is. So we're a bunch of misfits here at the gym. We're all united by one thing, and that's people come here to really, really work.
yeah,
We have bodybuilders, powerlifters, strongmen. We have athletes. We have pro athletes, college athletes. We have just regular people. But there's an energy in the gym where you come here, and one thing you don't see a lot of is, you go to a lot of gyms these days, and there's these like sterile kind of like library environments where everybody's got their headphones in and everybody's kind of head down. This is a place where everybody here is family. We know every single person by name. We know their backstory, and everybody knows each other. So yes, it is very much like a Bev's gym. It's a place where people who are very serious about their health in whatever capacity that is, go to train and to exercise their right to individual health.
yeah. I love that. I've worked out at Bev's a few times, and I love the vibe in there. I remember before I went there for the first time, but the buddy who took me there is like, he's like, dude, this isn't like Equinox or like these other gyms. He's like, this is like a
Yeah.
real hardcore gym. It's not like fancy, but it's like but there's like you go there, there's like all these like there's like celebrity bodybuilders and all these sorts of like hardcore fitness folks. And for some reason, I just like I felt like your gym was like a similar vibe, like a real old school kind of bodybuilding type or
Yeah.
gym. Yeah. What's your background, man? Because you're a very, very bright guy. Like, like, were you always into fitness? Do you have like a background in like, like law or something? Like,
So I am I'm just a regular guy. I mean, there's nothing. I don't have any special qualifications. It took me 10 years to get through college. I switched majors so many times. I actually went to prison for 6 years in my 20s. I just when I was 19, when I was 20 years old, right after my 20th birthday, I was leaving college to go home for the weekend, and I got in a very bad. I was the cause of a very, very bad motor vehicle accident in which the other driver lost their life. And the law is very clear there. I was driving extremely recklessly, and there was actually alcohol present in my system from the night before. I didn't drink and drive that night, but I had drank in such excess that not only was I hungover, but I had more than enough alcohol in my system to compromise my decision making. So at 20 years old, I caused the death of another young man at 19. And on my 21st birthday, right after, I went into prison for 5.5 years. I served 5.5 out of a 6-year sentence. So anything that I've learned is just through life experience. In prison, I had to really, really reassess who I was in order to deal with the consequences of my actions and to be okay and carry on. And one of the ways that I did was, in order for me to make peace with what my actions had done, I decided that I was going to radically improve who I was, and that hopefully I could give enough to the world in my later years, and I could do enough good, and I could help enough people that it would at least mitigate the damage slightly that I had done. You know, there's nothing I could ever do to mend the hearts that my actions broke. And there's no way I could ever bring back the young man who passed away. But I couldn't just sit around and feel sorry for myself, and or blame others or whatever it was. I had to take responsibility for it, and I had to find a workable solution so that two lives weren't lost, because one life was already lost. And if I didn't make anything of myself, and if I didn't do anything with my life, then I personally felt like that was disrespectful to the young man who passed away. Because I for some reason I had been given the opportunity to continue on, you know, and I shouldn't have, quite frankly. He should have walked away from that accident, and I should have been the one who passed away. So I felt like it was my personal responsibility for the rest of my life to try to just be a good person. Because I won't go so bad to say I was a bad person, but I wasn't necessarily a good one. I was a selfish teenager who didn't give a damn about anybody else. And that was reflective in my actions. You know, I was driving down a back road doing 60 some miles per hour. You know, that's reckless to the nth degree. And that was very indicative of everything I did at that age. I didn't care about others. It was, what did I want to do, and how do I get it done? And that was a really hard lesson for me, that I had to learn that your actions affect others in big ways. So part of the way, like I said, part of the way that I started to deal with it was I realized how powerful your individual actions can be. And knowing that, I educated and improved myself so that my actions could be good ones, and I could radiate some good out into the world instead of the type of damage that I had done before. So my background, I'm just somebody who's, you know, I've lived a weird life, to say the least. I was never really good in school. I was always good in school growing up. I didn't care. I was one of those kids who could sleep in the back of the class, never open a textbook, and get a B-, C+, and I was happy with that. Most of my education is self-taught. You know, I read a lot in prison. I would read 3-4 books a week, and I would read it. I read everything. I would be reading three books at a time. I would read one that was like a personal development or a spirituality or a self-help book. I would read something that was like a nonfiction, be that like a history or a business or a finance book. And then I would read, my stepfather is a very, very well-educated man, and he was determined to get me to read the classics. So I read things like Ayn Rand, Atlas Shrugged, all of the Sherlock Holmes, like all these classic pieces of literature. And I would digest books like, I mean, nothing else. And that's also where I got into fitness. And that's where I started. That was, for me, I didn't really care about my health beforehand, you know, but for some odd reason, I walked away from that accident and I was given a second chance. And that was my awakening, where I was like, wow, life is really fragile. Life is really precious, and it can be gone with no fault of your own in the blink of an eye. And so I started to get into fitness. But when I went to prison, you know, what they do is they strip everything from you. They strip your name, you're given a number. They strip your clothes, you're given a uniform. They strip your freedom of movement, your freedom of communication. You know, you name it. They take almost everything away from you. But the one thing that I could do, no matter what was going on, whether I was being shipped off to another place, or there were riots going on, or there were lockdowns going on, or whatever, even just regular prison life, the one thing I could do no matter what is I could get down on the ground, I could do some push-ups, I could work out. And that was something that I could physically anchor to in the new chaos of my life at that point. I was a kid from the suburbs. I had gotten in trouble before, but it's a, misdemeanor, getting caught with a joint, at a concert kind of thing. And that was my anchor. That was my form of stress relief. That was my form of mental health. That was something that no matter what, nobody could take that from me. And that was how I survived. That was how I got through prison, because two things happen when you go to prison. You either come out worse or you come out better. And the majority of people come out worse. So all of the negative attributes that you may have, for me, I was selfish, was one of them. For some people, it's angry, whatever it is. All of these negative attributes, if you don't actively work to improve yourself there, you will come out worse. You'll come out more selfish, more angry, more violent, more hostile, whatever. And I didn't want to be one of those people. I wanted to come out better. I didn't want that to be the last chapter of my story, where, oh, hey, you remember Ian? I went to high school with that kid. Yeah, he went to prison. Whatever happened to him? Oh, now he's a career criminal, or now he's a drug addict, or whatever. I wanted to make something of myself, and I like I said, I wanted to bring something to the world of value, because I hadn't given anything up until that point. So I was very determined on fixing all of those things about myself, and that's kind of what made me who I am today. It forced me to slow down. It forced me to really, really reassess. It forced me to question who I was, what my core values are, and that's what made me the persona that you see today.
I love that, man. You said so many things there, man. A few things I want to ask you. One is, did you work at all with a mental health care professional? Like when you're in prison, is that even an option? Like, because you had to work through some serious stuff.
They do have the option. You're not gonna get a whole lot of help. What I did, and I'm not a very religious person. I consider myself an agnostic. But I did go to church services, because that was a place for me to talk to people who were outside of the prison. And it was a way for me to escape prison for just a moment and talk about the bigger questions in life. So that was a big part. I went to church services, and there was a guy who would come in like once a month, and he would host a small group on Buddhism. So that was, and that's where I actually got introduced to Buddhism, which is not really a religion. It's more like a psychology. And that was very impactful in helping me kind of get through it. But, and my mental health was working out, that provided stress relief. That taught me how to be dedicated, how to be focused, how to be regimented. It also gave me a confidence that I didn't have. And then like I said, I read a lot, I wrote a lot, I journaled every single day. I spent time in solitary confinement, which is a very, very strange place. The silence of being alone with yourself and having nothing to distract you for a long period of time is a very, very loud noise, and you need to learn how to control it. So I kind of fumbled my way through all of this. I never really saw a professional in any capacity.
Were you in solitary confinement because like you got in trouble and had to get put in solitary confinement?
I wound up in solitary confinement because I had a run-in with the Aryan gangs. They wanted me to join, and I wasn't really interested in joining any gangs. And I was labeled a race traitor, and I stuck up for myself. And there was a threat on my life that was, I guess, credible. And they put me in solitary confinement until they could assess the threat. So I sat back there for a while. And that's really it. I mean, it certainly wasn't by choice.
Man. So just, can you go like a little bit like specifics into like what you did to work out? It's not like you had access to like gym equipment. I don't know if you did.
Every prison is different. They all have different rules and different protocol. For the first 2 years of my sentence, I did nothing but calisthenics. So I would get books. on like every single way that you can work out with your body. Your typical push-ups. I would even make up new push-ups. Like just we were forced to get really creative. So we did push-ups, pull-ups, dips, bodyweight squats, stuff like that, plyometrics and calisthenics. So explosive movements. When we were given yard time, we would run a lot. We would do a lot of sprinting, a lot of really high intensity interval training, because yard time is usually like 45 minutes start to finish, and we had to accomplish a lot. So we would, and there were a group of guys who felt the same way, and who were interested in, and we had a really good group of guys at all different parts, through my journey. Guys that understood how important it was to stay physically sharp. So we used to really push each other, and I eventually wound up at a prison. As your security status drops, you go to different prisons or different wings, and there's different things. And eventually, towards the end of my sentence, I wound up at a prison where they had a big yard with weights, and that's where I really got into weight training. And my job in the prison was actually a recreational aide, so I was out in the yard pretty much all day, and that's where I really started to say, hey, like, this is more than just a thing for me. Like, this is a passion. A couple of my friends photocopied, the entire NASM certification, all 800 pages of it, and sent it to me and stuff like that. So that's when I really started to dig into that and really develop my passion. It was more than just something I did to keep myself busy. It became an obsession. I wanted to see what I could do with my body, and how I could control it and all that. And that's, once it reached that point, I knew that this was what I was put here to do, because it had helped me so much become a better person. And not just physically, it helped me become a man, honestly, because up until prison, I was a boy. My father wasn't around. I didn't really have any male role models in my life. I was raised by women. I was raised by amazingly strong women. But I didn't know how to be a man. I thought being a man was, get girls. I thought that's what made you a man. A young kid in college, that's who I defined, like somebody who was cool. That was it. So that's where I learned how to be a man. I learned about responsibility and dedication and commitment to something. And these are all things that I think are really important for young men to understand. And I wanted, when I got out, to share that with the world, because working out really saved my life. And I wanted to share that with the world. And that's, I remember the day I decided that that's what I was going to do. I said, when I get out of here, I'm going to be a personal trainer, and I'm going to be the best. And, that was it. And I haven't let that change in however many years it's been. I lost count at this point.
How old are you now?
I just turned 34.
So, I mean, it wasn't that long ago that, all this stuff went down.
Yeah, I got out 8 years ago, I think. It's, yeah, about 8 years ago now.
Were you like jacked when you got out of prison? Like, you must have had a crazy physical transformation over those 6 years.
Well, I was, yeah. I went into prison at 6 foot, about 165 pounds, soaking wet. I was like a skinny fat kid. I somehow had a gut, and my arms were the same width from my wrist all the way up to my shoulder. And yeah, I put on about 50 pounds in prison. I went from about 165 to about 210, and that was a lot of that was just from body weight, and it was a very slow progression. So it was weight that I was able to maintain. Obviously it was put on naturally and through a lot of hard work. And then when I got out, I just kind of continued to run with that. So it was a very big transformation. It was a very big transformation in general. I was physically a very different person, but I was inside very, very different as well, and a much stronger person, a much more meaningful person, after all of it.
What was, like, obviously, to put on that kind of weight, nutrition is a big part of fitness. In prison, I imagine that's really hard to do.
Yeah, it's they don't feed you too much, and it's not exactly Whole Foods organic. So you do what you can. Fortunately, if you want to work in prison, you can work. And there were a group of guys that I aligned myself with who were all guys. There's a misconception when you go to prison that it's just full of bad people. And the fact of the matter is my best friend is somebody that I met in prison. And I met a lot of really good guys who just made really bad choices, and who were aligned with me in their thought that this sucks. I don't ever want to do this again. I'm going to serve my time. I'm going to make the most of my time. I'm going to get out of here, and I'm going to never come back. So we had a core group of guys that were all doing significant amount of time, who we all stayed really close, and we kept each other accountable, and we helped each other out. When you have money in prison, and it's funny because money in prison means your family puts $100 on your books every 2 weeks, which for a lot of people in prison, that's unheard of, but for your middle class coming from the suburbs, average American, it's not a whole lot of money. I mean, and I was very, very fortunate that my family and my friends supported me. So you're able to buy extra stuff, and there's a whole prison economy. You sell packs of cigarettes. They have a certain denominational value. So we were able to get our hands on the kitchen workers who, they want to make a little bit extra money. So we get 60 eggs, hard-boiled eggs every morning would just get delivered to the door, accidentally. And we would split them up among all the guys who wanted to work out, and we would all eat 10 eggs for breakfast, and we would drink a gallon of milk and anything to kind of put the weight on. It's thinking back, it's actually kind of gross what we used to eat. But yeah, I mean, you do what you can with what you have.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, I took a pretty massive fitness transformation over the last probably 7 years. I was a skinny fat my whole life, and with each kid, I have 3 kids. Each kid, I gained 10 pounds, and I just became this just flabby guy with a gut and moobs,
Yeah.
And then my brother-in-law and I actually had a bet because we both looked pretty sorry. This was Thanksgiving 2012. I'm like, dude, let's have a bet and see who's gonna get in the best shape on Memorial Day. So I went from 200 pounds and 21%, 196 pounds, 21% body fat, to 154 pounds, 8% body fat. I looked like I was dying because I was I'm 6 feet, I'm 6'1", but then I've slowly built it back up, and now I'm over the course of those years, and I'm obsessed with it, and now I'm about 196 and maybe 10%, but
yeah, healthy.
But the one thing I will say, and what I love about fitness is this is the most important thing. It's not the muscles, and and it's really just teaches you discipline. It teaches you, to say no. It teaches you accountability, because without any of those things, you can't transform a body and you can't maintain a fit physique. And also, fitness is the one thing you can't buy. You can't buy. You have to.
Very good point.
You have to put the work in. So I have a tremendous amount of respect when I see someone who's in great shape, because I know how much work it takes and how much dedication it takes. But more importantly, that just says something about that person's mindset. That they have a winner's mindset, a mindset of discipline, a mindset of getting up at 4:30 in the morning and getting their workout in before they have to go to work, or measuring their macros, or eating boring foods, the same shit every day. It just says it says something about someone's character, And
yeah, and to tie that back into all of this, what I said at the beginning, talking about individual health, if we really want a healthy population, and a population that can thwart off and resist, these potential health threats, because the fact of the matter is that COVID is just another virus and another bacteria in a long line of things that are coming down the pipeline at us. Viruses and bacteria have been around far longer than we have, and they're not going to just disappear. And this defensive public health strategy where we're just oh, the world is scary and dangerous, and I can't touch anything, and we're not allowed outside until we sterilize everything, it doesn't make any sense, because eventually we're going to crumble. But if you give people the ability to do that, to be healthy, then these risks and these events that come towards us are going to be much easier to handle, you know. And that's the conversation that we should be having when we're talking about public health, you know, because like you said, it makes you a better person, not just physically in terms of aesthetics, but it makes you a better, stronger, healthier person who's a more productive person, who is better able to fend off any sicknesses, and that radiates outward. You know, if you do that and I do that and our families do it, then our friends see it, and so on, and it creates a healthy environment. It creates a strong society. But nowadays public health has become a one-dimensional issue. It starts and ends with coronavirus, and it's like that's not even sane, because there's public health is an extremely complex idea, and we can't just throw everything else by the wayside and say gyms are closed, all this, all that, because people come to the gym for all of the things that you just said, to be a better person, whether that's for their mental health or whatever. You know, we have a guy who comes here, and he's my favorite example. His name is Joe Logue. He's one of my favorite people in the entire world. Joe Logue is a bad dude. He is an absolute warrior. He was a Marine. He is a two-time combat vet, two-time Purple Heart recipient. He was blown up by an IED twice. This is the kind of guy that you are thankful he is on your side. Nicest guy in the world, but when it comes to warfare and being a soldier, he is the epitome of a perfect soldier. And he has seen and done a lot, just like a lot of our veterans have, and other people who serve the community. You know, people who serve domestically, our police, our firefighters, stuff like that. Our nurses who work in critical care units. You know, these are all people who have very, very high stress jobs. You know, and Joe is somebody who comes in every day, about 7 o'clock, comes in every morning. He's 100% disability. He comes in and he absolutely crushes his workouts every day. There's no cell phone, there's no texting, there's nothing. He is here and he works and works and works and works. He's gone in an hour and a half, and every day when he walks out of this door, he's got a smile on his face. He goes home and he can be a father to his children, and he can be a husband to his wife. And without this, he can't do those. He cannot do those things. He will be medicated, whether that be with something from the VA or something coming out of a liquor bottle. And he will tell you this. You know, this is a man who has to deal with a lot of things that he has seen and done. And without this outlet, he's not a healthy person. And to take that away from people and say, no, COVID's more important than your physical and your mental health. You know, forget the fact that you have PTSD, forget the fact that you serve your country. You know, COVID is more important. That to me is abhorrent. It's a crime, you know, and it's very, very short-sighted in terms of public health.
Yeah, I think at the beginning of this thing, you know, a lot of people were like, wow. And of course, your mindset has shifted from, you know, at the beginning, no one really knew about this. But after a certain point, I think more and more rational people have that viewpoint, is like, you know, okay, none of this makes really any sense anymore. And, you know, they're even telling folks now, like, if you have like chest pain, you know, go to the hospital, because people weren't even going to the hospital if they were having a heart attack, you know, like.
Yeah, exactly. And that's insane. It's
Yeah, two other quick things, man. One is, what you mentioned this. I think it was in one of your posts, or maybe it was something that I saw on TV or one of your interviews. You know, a lot of folks who have struggled with addiction, who are recovering addicts, and I would say this is like a pretty solid percentage of folks who are obsessed with fitness are recovering addicts. And
absolutely.
Now, like during COVID and quarantine, like addiction must be at all-time highs. You know, everyone was just drinking more, and I'm sure whatever else, you know, they were indulging in. Just there was nothing else to do, and you were stuck in your house, and you're watching the news, and you're getting anxious and depressed, and you know, all of the things that turned addicts into addicts. You know, just and not having a place to work out or that release, like you were mentioning with Joe. that's his mental health release to deal with PTSD and all the other stuff that he's endured throughout the course of his life. For addicts, a lot of times the gym is their safe haven and what keeps them from being an addict. Maybe if you could just speak a couple of,
I mean, that is the playbook to beat addiction is go to meetings and go to the gym. And I can say that because in my youth, I struggled with drug abuse. Was I an addict? I don't know. But I certainly abused drugs, and I certainly abused alcohol. So I've been in those rooms, and I've struggled with my ability to say no to things in the past. And I know a lot of people, and that is the playbook. Keep yourself busy. Give yourself a long-term task to sink your teeth into and distract you from these urges and these whatever they are, these tendencies that you have. Replace that extreme need to do things, sort of with haste normally, because drug addiction it's linked to this spontaneity and this compulsory kind of behavior where you give in to urges very quickly, and that urge comes and you just, okay, I'm gonna go get high or I'm gonna go drink, and you replace that with, all right, I'm feeling it, I'm gonna go work out, and that is the playbook. Like, go to meetings and go to the gym, and I know hundreds, if not thousands, of people that I have met throughout my life, and that is the exact playbook that they have used to not only get out of addiction, but to continuously beat it and to stay out of that threat for long periods of time, if not forever. And again, going back to what we just talked about with Joe, it's the same exact thing. How can you deprive somebody of that, knowing full well that they need it, that they absolutely need it, and knowing full well that you don't have the science to prove that what they're doing is dangerous? Because again, there's none. There's no science that says you can't go to a gym safely. Are there precautions that you need to take? Yes. Are there major considerations that need to be taken by the owners of fitness facilities in order to minimize and mitigate the risk as much as possible? Yes. And is there still a threat? Obviously. But can you do it and still serve the people that need you? Absolutely. 100% yes.
I agree with you, man. In New York, gyms are opening up tomorrow.
Yes.
Is it the same in Jersey?
No.
No.
We have still to date, no protocol even put forth, no dates, no metrics that we need to hit. I was on a call with 300 other gym owners and the chief of staff for Murphy last Friday, not the one that just passed, the one before. And we were given lip service for 30 minutes. The chief of staff just rambled on. Again, using fear as their primary thing. We don't want the spikes to happen, and the science and the data says, no science and data presented, but the science and data says, when people breathe heavy, they're gonna, whatever. And we were given lip service. The goalposts have moved so many times now that I don't even know what the next goalpost is. At first it was, we wanted deaths down, deaths fell. Then we wanted hospitalizations down, hospitalizations went down. Then we wanted cases down, cases are down. Now they told us they want the infection rate at 0.8 and they want it to hold and they said they don't know. They said maybe 2, maybe 3 weeks, we're not sure yet. But then they went on to say that we don't know what it's going to look like when it opens. So they haven't even put any thought into it yet, which really to me is very indicative that, again, this isn't about public health. This is about politics. Because if it was about public health, you would have had this figured out a long time ago. Today in New Jersey, this is day 160 of a 14-day shutdown. If you haven't thought about it yet, you aren't taking it seriously, and you aren't taking people's livelihood seriously. Right. Because to say like Governor Murphy says that his heart breaks for small businesses and stuff like that. Well, then why haven't you thought about it then?
Right.
You've had 160 days, and you haven't even put a thought into what it looks like when indoor dining reopens and when gyms reopen. You don't have any protocol, and I think that's a crime, because you're destroying people's lives.
I totally 1,000% agree, man. And of course it's going to be the small business owner like yourself that's going to put together a safe, good plan, because you're immersed in that business, and obviously you want to operate your business and you want to operate it in a safe way. I think your data alone, you said, I think it was like 23, was it
25,546 visits to the facility and not a single infection.
Right. I mean, that's pretty compelling. And the other thing that's odd is, in Long Island, you can actually eat indoors now. But, in New Jersey, which isn't that far away, you can't. New York City, you can't. I mean, it's when schools were shutting down, one district was open, one district was shutting down, like neighboring towns. Like, there's just no plan. Like,
no consistency.
Everyone's shooting from the hip, and it's like a different plan for 10 miles away is a different plan than where we are now. It's frustrating. It's very frustrating as a business owner. And I will tell you also, like the whole unemployment situation, with the extra stimulus checks and stuff that were provided by the federal government, which I'm all for. If people are down and out, they need to be able to survive.
Sure, absolutely.
It's the point where people were actually making more on unemployment than they were being employed. So when New York City opened back up in June, and some of the doctors went back to work in June, their staff didn't want to come back because they didn't feel comfortable coming back until August 1st. Because guess what? All the stimulus money runs out July 31st.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. It's just none of this stuff is logical. Like, no one. It seems like there's just no thought is put into measures that are put into place. And you're someone who has a very, very well thought out plan. You're obviously have executed it flawlessly and meticulously. There's not been one single case of corona and 25,000 visits to your gym, which is insane. I don't know any business that has data to back up their plan, the implementation of their plan. I just want to just kind of go back to something you said earlier, because it's kind of been on my mind. There's so many things that you've said that are things that resonate with me personally. You mentioned core values. Like, it was something about core values. Have you actually defined core values for yourself? Like, are there like 4 or 5 things that kind of define in a nutshell? Like, I mean, you don't have to. If you have it, that's not a big deal. But is this something that you've actually thought about? I'm just curious.
Yeah, they're changing and they're evolving. But I've had the opportunity that most people haven't had to sit and think for long periods of time, and so I've always kind of been into that. And actually, in college, I was a philosophy major, so we talked about virtues and stuff like that. And through all of this that's been happening, I've actually connected with a group of people that support me, of like-minded men especially. And we've started to work on some projects, because what we're looking at when we're looking at the big picture is what is going on in the world today, and why are there so many issues. And what the conclusion we came to is that men need to step up a little bit. And I think that we've been a little complacent, and masculinity has been watered down. And that I think a lot of men don't understand their place in society anymore. And they don't understand that they have a responsibility as men to society. And they have a responsibility to society to be good men, to be virtuous men, to have core values. And they don't have to be set in stone for everybody, but I think that's something that we should be talking about as men, whether it's older men or teaching the young men coming up. It's an important question. So I think that's a really good one. And I think for me, I think one of them is diligence and hard work. Growing up, I never wanted to work hard. I had a stepdad who made me work hard and kind of, taught me the values of hard work, but I wasn't interested in that. And as I've gotten older, I've started to really learn and appreciate the value of good hard work in whatever it is, whether that's manual labor, whether you're more of an intellectual person, but when you're given a task to truly give your all to it. And that's absolutely one of them. Another one for me is openness. I think that it's important to be an open book, and to allow yourself to be known by people, and not just on a superficial level. Which is why I've always been honest about my past, and I've always shared my past. And that was from the get-go. I've spoken at over 25 high schools about what I've done. I've written extensively. At one point, I had a blog, and I talk about it. And everybody who knows me knows that that's who I am, and that's what I did. And I think that's important because it holds you accountable for your mistakes. You can't, when you're open and you're true about who you are. Your flaws are out there for everybody. So by nature, you're going to want to eradicate those flaws because you're open about them. And I think that's something that a lot of us struggle with, is that we don't want to admit that we're not perfect. We don't want to take criticism, so we hide the things that's wrong with us, or we hide our shortcomings, or we deny them. If I had to pick one more, grit would be it. And that's something that I'm learning more about recently. Grit is like my new favorite thing. Toughness, mental toughness, and having the mental fortitude to handle anything that gets thrown your way, be it a 6-year prison sentence or whatever. But having the ability to conquer anything that is put in your path, whether that be in your career, whether that be in your relationships, whether that be in your friendships, whatever it is, but to have the grit to hang on to something and see it all the way through, no matter how many punches you have to take, and to get through it, because that's how you become a better person. That's how nothing good was ever achieved easily, and if you have grit, you can accomplish anything. And I think that's something that a lot of us don't realize. We put limits on ourselves, and I did for years. I can speak to that. I never did anything amazing as a kid because I never thought I could, because I always thought I can't do that. You know what I mean? I never played sports growing up. I've never really tried really hard in school because it was easier for me to just say, I don't feel like doing this, than for me to fail, take punches, and get back up and keep going. I was afraid to take those punches because I thought I wasn't going to be able to get back up, when in reality is with grit, and by developing that grit, nothing can stop you.
I love it, man. That's very, very David Goggins-esque.
Yes, it is. Yes, inspired by, actually, among others.
All of the stuff that you're saying, it's like, I feel like, we're kind of reading from the same playbook, man, because I think a lot of guys, like, I didn't grow up with a dad. I didn't have a dad growing up, so I kind of learned what being a father and being a husband and what all of those things mean by, like, screwing up, doing it, and, like, learning along the way and trying to be just a better person, and give my kids what I didn't have growing up, or, give my wife what my mom didn't have, for the bulk of her life. And I really appreciate you, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. I love your story. It's very powerful, and I love what you're doing. And I think you're showing you're showing a tremendous amount of grit, like fighting this fight that you're fighting, man. So I think you've definitely won that one, And man, I'm rooting for you hard, man. I know a lot of people are, and I think people get the wrong idea of what your movement is really all about, because I said, like, there is a lot of, like, political leaning on your riding on your back a little bit here, but you're doing this for the interest of society, for, like, the interest of small businesses, it's for really speaking to what the right thought process is in making a decision that affects an entire society. It's like, you're basically fighting the fight for all of us, and especially us small business owners, man. And, your story speaks to me. You as a human really speaks to me. I think my audience is really going to, come behind you as well, man, because, you're an impressive man.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. And I love these longer format conversations. It allows you to really understand each other. And I think that the kind of work that you do with this podcast and what other people do with diving into subjects that can't just be covered by a news article and stuff like that, I think are so important, because we've entered this world where everything is a soundbite or a meme or and it's conversations like this, I think, really lead to fostering a lot more understanding amongst each other. So I'm happy to be a part of it, and I love this stuff, and it's interesting, and we're just getting started here. Once we conquer this and go, we're going to be on to the next project, and the goal is to make ourselves better and to make the world a better place, one small battle at a time.
That's what it's all about, man. Well, I'm definitely gonna come down there for a workout, man.
Our doors are open, and they're staying open.
All right, brother. Well, thank you so much again for your time, man.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. You have a great day. Thanks for having me on.
You too, brother.